Serious, what's the creepiest slash scariest thing that you've seen but no one believes you? My one weird thing was this. Some friends and I were hanging out one summer's eve. We were around 15. It was night, clear, and we were all lying on my friend's trampoline in the backyard. We were just all chatting and looking at the stars. Suddenly, we are all like, what the heck? Did you just see that? We all swore we saw a formation of stars trade places with each other. They sort of left a tail, like a shooting star, before resettling in their new positions. They all moved at the exact same time. It was strange. 3 of us seemed to see the same thing. It was the night before my stepmom died, lost her battle to cancer. I was 22, was spending the night in bed with my 9-year-old half-brother, cuddling him and telling him his mom was gonna be okay, it wasn't gonna hurt anymore. It's about 3 AM at the time, and after a while he immediately sits upright in bed, smiles, says I promise to be a good boy, mommy, I love you. Now my stepmom has been bedridden for the last month, so she's not moving anywhere. But I swear on my life, and my little brother agrees with me, for a split second I saw her standing in the doorway wearing her big giant fur coat, just smiling at us, and just looking relieved. Brother went to sleep about 2 minutes later. I left to go into my dad and stepmom's room, to check on her to see my dad awake, and telling me she died about half an hour ago. I genuinely believe she stopped by on her way to the other side, to check in on her 2 kids, and make sure we'd be okay without her before she left. I was working in Lagos, Nigeria, sitting in a bar on one of the lagoons near Lekki, when a body washed up naked except for underwear. I called the waitress over a bit frantically, and pointed at the body. She pulled her face, and went back into the bar, where I was expecting that she would call the police, but no. She returned with a long stick with a nail on the end, stabbed into his bum, and pushed him out, like they must have done in the past as they had made a tool for it. When I was a teenager I used to keep the remote to my stereo on the lip of my bed frame. One night around midnight I woke up to my stereo playing static at me, only it was getting louder. I could see the volume number moving higher and higher. So it's pitch black and this static is getting louder and louder and the remote wasn't in its usual place for some reason. I had no choice but to jump out of bed to turn it off. I turned on the light and, freaking out, found it under my bed. Like, deep under my bed at that middle point that's super hard to reach. When I was 16 I skipped school to stay home and play video games. I set up my PlayStation and made some hot pockets and, right when I get good and comfortable I hear footsteps walking to my room. I glance outside and see my parents aren't home yet but was still afraid I was going to get caught. Seeing no place to hide I froze. Suddenly the door was flung open and I heard a blood-curdling scream echo through the house. I must have sat there petrified in that room for half an hour before going outside and waiting for my parents to come home. I tried to explain to my friends later what happened, but they thought I was just pulling some crap from the internet. Was walking through the Rockies and managed to tear the muscle on the side of my foot so was hobbling back. I was on my own like a moron. In the space of hobbling back to Jasper I saw a white bear, think they are called spirit bears, just sitting watching me. Literally thought hexsake I'm gonna die here mauled by a bear and no one knows where I am. But it just sat there and poured the dirt in the direction of the town. I limped on keeping an eye on it and it just watched me. Then I swear to God no more than 5 minutes later a hecking wolf appears limping exactly on the same foot I'm limping on, eyes me up, and continues on its journey. I think I was even too pathetic to bother with is the moral of that story. I was petrified though either way. I was maybe 4 or 5. We lived in a somewhat questionable neighborhood at the time. And looking out the window one night I swear I saw a neighbor from an app nearby with her son. He was on one of those plastic trikes. I believe she ran inside to grab a jacket. In the 3 minutes she was gone, a vehicle pulled up and snatched the kid and took off. His mom came back and was looking for him. I tried to tell the adults in my app but no one believed me or the other kids with us. Still the scariest thing that haunts me to this day. It's not that people don't believe me, it's more that I hardly believe it myself. It was late, probably between 1 and 3 AM, and I was sitting at an intersection waiting for the light to go green. Across from me was a dark road with trees on either side and thick woods off to the left and houses off to the right. So I'm sitting there listening to music when I see something move at the edge of the woods to the left. Now this is rural New Jersey, so things moving in the woods are either bears or deer, which aren't scary, but deer will mess your car up if run out in front of you. I turned my high beams on to see what it was, but they didn't reach the woods. Then I saw more movement before the light turned green. I made my left turn and drove off, but I couldn't see what it was. The next day I drive the same route on my way to work, and when I get to that intersection there's cops and ambulance over at the edge of the woods where I saw the movement the night before. I asked a coworker what happened, and he said they had found dismembered body parts there early that morning. I know I'm late, so this will probably get buried. My friend's grandma's house was right up against a cemetery. He always told me it was haunted and would see crazy stuff there, but I never believed him. One night, we were over her house and I swear, I saw something the size of a toddler run from the living room, through the dining room, and into the kitchen. When I looked at my friend, he just went, "Did you just see that kid run through the hecking house?" It looked more like a fast running shadow than an actual person. There was no one there. There were no kids around. It was his grandma's house, and we were the only ones over. It was late at night, and no doors opened or closed. When we told his grandma, she was just like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It happens all the time." After that, I started believing in ghosts. My friend also said, when he used to sleep there, he used to push the spare room's TV away from him, so it faced away from him, because he would wake up at night and see people in the reflection staring back at him watching him sleeping. Scared the crap out of him. Was working at a convenience store, late shift. Just about nobody comes in from about 10:45 until we close at midnight. The way the store is set up is, from behind the counter I'm about 6 feet from the door in front of me, and to my left, and directly above it are 2 security monitors. It's a very small store. The monitors flip through a few different camera angles, in the back, just outside the front door, in the lot, in the shed, by the coolers, and then repeat the cycle again. I'm working by myself, just me and my phone. 11:00 hits. Nobody comes in for a while, probably 20 minutes of silence. Some time passes, and I glance at the security monitor. It's showing the angle of the lot, and it shows in such a way that you could see someone's back as they enter the front door, and it's pretty dark out, so the best way to see if a customer's coming is to watch the cameras. It's at a slight delay, so I would see something happen on the monitors a second or two after it actually happened. When the angle from the lot comes back on, I see a man, from behind, enter the front door. Black guy, not too tall, leather jacket. He's got a grocery bag in his right hand. I glance down at the front door, which is just below the monitors. Nobody's there. I thought it was a glitch, maybe an old tape replaying. I watch through another cycle of the camera angles, which lasts about 45 seconds or so, just to see if it would happen again. Halfway through the cycle, the door swings open, and into the store steps a young man, black guy, not too tall, wearing a leather jacket. He's holding a grocery bag in his right hand. The icing on the cake was that he didn't buy anything. He just looked around for a minute and left. Mind playing tricks on me, I guess, but I was spooked out of my mind. Didn't work any more nights after that. TLDR. Saw something happen on the security monitors about a minute before it actually happened. A few years ago, my wife and I spent 3 months in Bermuda for work. Initially, we rented a large detached house whose owners were back in the States. There was one locked room on the top floor, presumably containing the owner's personal possessions. After a few nights, we both began to hear footsteps from upstairs. This was relatively easy to ignore as we put it down to rodents, even though they sounded human-like footsteps and heavy. We had checked the locked door and there was never any sign of movement there. One night I was asleep when, in my dazed state, I imagined somebody right by my face shouting "Wake up." This was from my right side. My wife was sleeping to my left. Immediately after, I felt myself pulled down the bed. I awoke to find my legs hanging off the end of the bed and my right cheek moist, as if somebody had shouted at me from 6 inches and their saliva had sprayed my face. I panicked, woke up my wife, and checked the room, but there was nobody there. I checked the rest of the house and all was quiet. I washed my face quite vigorously after though. We left the house soon after that night and claimed the company flat as soon as it became available. Never had anything like that happen to me before or since. I was working at a bakery on third shift, 8 PM to 4 AM, at the local orchard. The store closed at 8, but it wasn't unheard of for the owners to come in after closing. I had been working there for about a week at this point. I was out stocking the shelves, so it was close to the end of our shift, so probably 3 AM-ish. I turned to take something off of the rack and there was a man standing by the cold case. He was late 40s/early 50s, bald, thin/average build, wearing a red flannel shirt tucked into jeans. He said, "Hello, how are you?" I said, "Hi, I'm doing well, how are you?" He said, "I'm fine, thank you." I put the bread on the shelf and turned to ask who he was/introduced myself, and he was gone. I was only turned for a few seconds, so there's no way he could have left my line of sight without me seeing some part of him leaving, and I never heard any doors open or close to indicate that he left or went elsewhere in the store. I told my mom when I got home, because I was like, what if someone broke in? Do I want to work at a place where people can just easily waltz in undetected? She asked me about it. I told her it was weird because he was just standing there looking at a covered up cold case, so he couldn't see what was actually in it, and he didn't seem like he was trying to steal anything. She told me it was probably just the owner. I met the owner a few days later. He was not the man that I saw there a few nights prior. It wasn't anyone that worked there. I had heard from co-workers that the owner was still working there because his son, that was supposed to take over the business, had died of cancer. That night after work I went home and looked up the son's obituary online, and I kid you not, it was the guy I saw in the store. About a year ago I was up watching movies late at night when I got hungry and went downstairs for a snack. My room is across from my daughter's room and her door was open. As I was coming back upstairs I start turning left towards my room when I hear, clear as ever, "Daddy, can you close the door?" I turn around, don't say much, and just close it. Once I'm back in my room, I lie down to watch TV when it hits me. My daughter isn't there. She's spending the night at my parents'. I get up and go to her room and sure enough, it's empty. I woke up my wife and she thinks I'm crazy. Says I was probably tired and maybe it was the TV. I remember the voice so clear and coming in the direction of her room. It's very possible that it was just my head playing games, but it definitely made me question a few things. My wife and I were driving up through northern Arizona on Highway 89 between Flagstaff and Page. It was about 1 AM, as we were on third shift at the time and often drove at night to avoid traffic. I saw a few sets of eyes glowing in my headlights a little ways up the road, so I let off the gas, slowing down to avoid hitting an animal in the road. When we drove by we saw several dogs, coyotes, on the side of the road, and I hit the gas and drove by. After we passed my wife said one of them was running next to the car and I looked over and saw it as well, probably 20 feet off the shoulder of the road. I floored it and looked over and it stood up on its hind legs. That's the only way I can describe it, and kept pace with us for a couple seconds before turning away from the road and disappearing. This whole event probably lasted no more than 10 seconds, but it was seriously the most terrifying 10 seconds of my life. This was probably 20 years ago, and we still rarely talk about it. I was home alone one day when I was around 10 and was in my room I shared with my brother. We had bunk beds, and I was laying on the top bunk when the bed started shaking pretty hard for a good 5 to 10 seconds. I was terrified, but gathered the courage to look down under my bunk at the bottom bunk and there was nothing there. I jumped down and noped the heck out of my house and waited on the porch until my parents got home. When I told them what happened, they didn't really think anything of it and thought I was just making it up. I don't care what anyone says, that stuff happened. I remember it clear as day still 20 years later. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like, comment and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for threads you would like to see done drop them in the comments below and I will try to get to them.